Imagine you wake up and you cannot move. Not the kind of cannot move from sleep paralysis. Not the kind from exhaustion. Not the kind where you just don't want to get up yet. The kind where your arms hit something solid 6 inches above your face. Where your legs push down and meet resistance. Where you reach left and there is wood. Right wood. Above you wood. Below you. A thin layer of fabric over wood. The air smells wrong. Stale. Like a room that has been sealed for too long. You take a breath and it comes, but it feels thinner than it should. You take another. Still there, but something is off. Your heart is going fast now. Faster than it should be for someone lying still. And the dark is absolute. Not the dark of a room with curtains closed. Not the dark of a basement with the lights off. The dark of no light source existing anywhere near you. You are in a coffin. You are underground. And you are alive. Here's what nobody tells you. This was not rare. For hundreds of years, across dozens of countries, across every social class, this happened to real people with names and families, and lives they expected to continue living. The fear was so widespread, so documented, so real, that it changed the way human civilization handled death. It invented new technologies. It created new laws. It reshaped funeral practices across the entire Western world. And the reason it happened is stranger and more disturbing than you think. But first, let's talk about what is actually happening to your body, minute by minute, from the moment you wake up underground. A standard coffin contains roughly 700 liters of air. That sounds like a lot. It is not. Your body at rest consumes approximately 0.5 liters of oxygen per minute. That math gives you somewhere. Between 90 minutes and 5 hours before the oxygen, concentration drops to a level where your body can no longer function. But here's the thing nobody talks about. You are not going to be at rest. The moment you realize what has happened, your heart rate will spike. Your breathing will accelerate. Your muscles will flood with adrenaline, and you will almost certainly begin to push, to scratch, to pound against the wood above you with everything you have. In that state, panicking, fighting, consuming oxygen at 3 or 4 times the resting rate. Your window does not close in 5 hours. It closes in 20 minutes, maybe 30 if you force yourself to go still. If you can control the panic, slow the breathing, press your back into the mattress beneath. You unforce your mind into something that feels impossible in that moment. Calm. Every breath you take is a decision. Every second of panic is oxygen you are spending. The people who survived being buried alive, and some did, survived because of this. Not because they were stronger, because they were slower. Here is where it gets strange. Oxygen depletion does not feel the way you expect. We talked about this in the space video. The desperate clawing need for air, that feeling, comes from carbon dioxide building up in your blood, not from oxygen disappearing. The two are different processes, and they happen at different speeds. In a sealed coffin, CO2 accumulates faster than oxygen depletes. At normal levels, CO2 in air is around 0.04%. In a sealed coffin, within the first 30 minutes, it rises toward 5%. At 5%, you feel a crushing pressure in your chest. Breathing becomes deliberate, labored, like something is sitting on your lungs. Your head begins to pound. At 8%, confusion sets in. Real confusion, not the mild kind. The kind where you cannot complete a thought. Where the sequence of actions that seemed obvious, find the hinge, push here, call for help, begins to dissolve. Your hands may still be moving, but they are not following instructions anymore. At 10% unconsciousness. At levels beyond that, the body shuts down system by system. Not explosively, quietly. Like a building losing power, floor by floor. Here is the cruelest part. The panic that kills you fastest also feels, in the moment, like the only rational response. Your mind is screaming at you to fight, to move, to do something, anything, because that is what minds do when they are in danger. And every time you listen to it, you are shortening the time you have left. The coffin does not kill you with force. It kills you by turning your own survival instinct against you. Now here is the question that changes everything. How did people end up in coffins while still alive? The answer is medicine. Or more precisely, the catastrophic limits of medicine before the 20th century. Before modern diagnostics, before EEGs, before reliable pulse oximeters, before the full understanding of coma states, the line between death and something that looked exactly like death was blurry, dangerously blurry. Cholera was the main culprit. Cholera dehydrates the body so rapidly that in its final stages, the heartbeat becomes nearly imperceptible. Breathing slows to almost nothing. The body temperature drops. The skin takes on a grayish color. Cholera victims in the 18th and 19th century, epidemics that swept through Europe and America, presented, to the untrained eye, and often even to trained physicians, as dead. They were not always dead. Catalepsy, a neurological condition that causes sudden muscle rigidity and a dramatic slowing of all bodily functions, produced the same result. A cataleptic episode could render a person completely unresponsive for hours or days. Heartbeat present but barely. Breath shallow to the point of invisibility, appearing, by every available measure at the time, to have died. The statistics from this era are deeply uncomfortable to read. In 1905, a German physician named Dr. J.C. Oeg conducted a survey of burial records across several European countries and estimated that 1 in every 1,000 burials involved a person who was not yet dead. 1 in 1,000 sounds small. In a city burying 50 people a week, that is 1 person every 20 weeks, buried alive in a world without cell phones, without anyone to hear them, with soil packed above them and no mechanism for escape. This was known, it was documented, and it was terrifying enough that it changed everything. The fear had a name, taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive. And it was not a fringe anxiety. It was mainstream. It was rational. It was shared by some of the most notable figures in history. George Washington, in his final days, made one specific request of his attendants: do not bury me for at least 2 days after I appear to die. He had seen enough to know that appearances could deceive. Frédéric Chopin, the composer, left instructions that his body be cut open before burial, not out of morbidity, out of terror that he would be placed underground while still alive. Hans Christian Andersen, the author of fairy tales, slept with a note beside his bed every night. Written on the note were the words, "I only appear to be dead." The fear produced an industry. In 1791, a German physician named Christoph Wilhelm Hufland designed the first documented safety coffin. It included a tube for air circulation and a bell system connected to the surface. The concept was simple. If the person inside woke up, they could ring the bell. Over the next century, the designs became more elaborate. Patents were filed across Europe and America for coffins with speaking tubes, with ladders for climbing out, with food supplies, with light sources, with mirrors so the person could check their own breath. One design included a flag that would rise above the grave if movement was detected. Another involved a mechanism, triggered by heartbeat, that would automatically unseal the coffin lid. Germany went further. In several major cities, they constructed Leichenhäuser, waiting houses, buildings where bodies were stored for several days before burial, connected by wires to the fingers of the deceased, monitored by attendants around the clock. If a finger moved, an alarm rang. It is worth pausing on that image. A room full of bodies, each one connected by a wire to a bell, watched over through the night by a person paid to listen for the sound of life. That existed. People built that because the alternative, the possibility of what was happening in the ground, was worse. Some people made it. In 2011 in South Africa, a 24-year-old man named Saifu William Medlechi was declared dead after a car accident. He was placed in a metal box in the mortuary. He woke up 21 hours later. The workers who heard him screaming fled. They believed he was a zombie. He was not a zombie. He was a young man who had survived something that should not be survived. In 1674, a woman in England named Anne Green was hanged for infanticide, cut down after 30 minutes, placed in a coffin, and transported to Oxford for medical dissection. When the physicians began their work, she coughed. They revived her over several hours. She was pardoned. She went on to marry and have 3 children. The coffins from the 18th and 19th centuries, when periodically exhumed for various reasons, sometimes told different stories. Scratches on the inside of the lid, wood worn away at the corners. Positions of bodies shifted dramatically from the placement at burial. Limbs that had been neatly folded found, pressed against walls and lids. The science on this is complicated. Not all post-burial movement indicates life. Decomposition gases can shift bodies. Coffin materials settle unevenly. But some cases were unambiguous. Some coffins told a story that had only one interpretation. Someone had been awakened there. Someone had tried. Let's go back to the coffin. You have been in there for, let's say, 15 minutes. You have managed to slow your breathing. You have forced the panic down enough to think. The darkness is total. There is nothing to look at, nothing your eyes can fix on, nothing that gives your brain the visual anchor it is constantly, desperately seeking. In sensory deprivation research, subjects in completely dark, completely silent environments begin hallucinating within 20 minutes. The brain, starved of input, starts generating its own. You might begin to see things, not clearly. Shapes at the edge of perception, patterns that aren't there. The mind trying to make something out of nothing. The silence is also wrong. Not peaceful silence, dense silence, the kind of silence that presses. Sound requires a medium to travel through, and 6 feet of packed soil is extremely efficient at absorbing it. Whatever is happening above you, cars, voices, footsteps, wind, none of it reaches you. You are in a world that has become 5 cubic feet of stale air and wood, and the sound of your own breathing. Psychologists who study extreme confinement talk about a specific cognitive shift that happens after the initial panic phase. If a person survives their first fear response and reaches a period of forced stillness, something unusual sometimes occurs, a kind of hyperclarity. Thoughts become extraordinarily vivid. Memories surface with unusual detail. Time perception distorts completely. Minutes feeling like hours, or occasionally the reverse. It is, in a deeply uncomfortable way, similar to states achieved in meditation. The brain, stripped of everything external, turns entirely inward. Some of the people who survived early premature burials reported this. Not peace exactly, something stranger. A complete, involuntary presence in the moment, because the moment was the only thing that existed. Here is what strikes me about all of this. The safety coffin era ended not because the fear went away. It ended because medicine got good enough that the fear became irrational. The EEG, the stethoscope, the understanding of coma, the monitoring equipment in modern hospitals that measures brain activity, heart rhythm, oxygen saturation, simultaneously, continuously, with alarm systems that trigger if any reading drops below threshold. We solved the problem, and in solving it, we forgot it existed. But here's the thing that does not go away. Every person who ever requested a safety coffin, every person who slept with a note beside their bed that said, "I only appear to be dead," every person who made their family wait 2 days was responding to the same truth. The line between living and not living is thinner than we want it to be. The body can go to places that look, from the outside, like the end, and sometimes come back. The people buried alive who survived were not special. They were not stronger or braver or more deserving. They were simply people whose bodies had not finished yet. And the people who didn't survive, the ones the scratches in the coffin lids belonged to, they were the same, just people, waking up somewhere they were never supposed to be, doing the only thing a person can do in that situation. Trying. There is a word for that. Not tragedy, though it is. Not horror, though it is. It is, in the most stripped down sense, what being human is. You wake up in a situation you didn't choose. You have limited air and limited time, and something in you, something unreasonable, something that doesn't check the odds, keeps trying anyway. We are all, in some version of this, doing exactly that.